I'm with Chris Baillie from the ACT Party. What a privilege to have you here. Thanks very much for coming in, Chris.
A pleasure, Max.
All
Great
the way
to be
from
here.
Christchurch to Auckland, just
Nelson,
to be here.
Actually,
Nelson,
Max, yeah, all the way from Nelson. Yeah.
Wow. Well, thanks anyway, and look, I much appreciate it. Now, what we're going to talk about today is the Fair Pay Act. It's now passed.
It has.
Yeah, and most people have no idea what it's about. So, why is it that people don't know about it?
Well, it's hard to say, really. I mean, I know a number of my employees. I've got a bar and a restaurant in Nelson. I've got 26 employees. And some of them are actually interested in it. They've looked through the bill and they don't want a bar of it. But I know a lot of people that friends and stuff, they have no idea what's going on.
So I'm getting the same feedback from employees. They're resenting the fact that the unions are going to take over from them. They will have very, very limited say at all in regards to what's going to happen about the negotiation of their employment terms.
Yeah, quite right. And the feedback I'm getting from employees is that they really don't want a bar of it. They think that they're perfectly capable of organising their own employment contracts successfully. There's a bit of give and take with the employers and the employees, and it's worked really well. And they don't want to be drawn into any sort of industrial dispute that they don't want any part of.
So, the ACT Party, you obviously voted for it.
Yeah, no, not a chance. No, and we will repeal it when we're in government next year.
Right, and what that means, folks, is it means they'll rip it straight back out again. Now, of course, I'm really interested to know what will replace that, but let's not talk about that this round, but next round we ought to, because
Sure.
I'm not very happy with the current legislation either, and so it's a privilege to be a part of the previous legislation, which is how we used to do bargaining, to this one. Now, there's one thing in there the Labour government's very proud of, is there's no ability for people to strike, to force the hand of employers.
Yes, yeah, well, that's what's in the legislation, and they trumpeted that quite loudly. But I think the fact that a union or an organisation can start the process going, and part of the deal is that they give employees of that particular sector information on the union, so that encouraging them to join. And while there's no strike, you're not meant to be going on strike, you can guarantee there'll be a lot of unsettling stuff going on.
Oh, absolutely, because I think I termed it the pay envy revolution is about to hit, and that's what it's about, because they're even talking now of having transparent pay rates for everybody. And of course, this will lean to it. Chris, what I'm seeing is that there's a process which is arduous, difficult, convoluted, and I see the word, they've got to go and get consent, they've got to run off to a public servant every 5 minutes to get everything, is 116 times, I think, in the Act. It's just phenomenal. So how do you see this running? Will it be a smooth race, or will it take long for an agreement to be thrown at the people?
No, it'll take a long time for the process to be worked through. It is a really complicated bill. There's so many little fish hooks and things that things are going to get stuck on, guarantee it. Talking about the wage rates before, I look at wage rates as for loyalty, for hard work, and other of those sorts of qualities. Whereas Michael Wood and the Labour Party, they believe in compression. They think compression's a good thing where there isn't such a wide range of wages, and everyone should pretty much be around the same, and don't worry about effort.
I'd be interested to know in the debate, because one thing that's obvious to me, the word productivity is never used at all, nor affordability. They should be, because there's a criteria, for those that don't know it out there, there's a criteria in the Act that the parties are compelled to negotiate. And it's all for the benefit of the employee and nothing for the employer.
Absolutely. Once the process is started, they have to come to a conclusion. And you're right, productivity is a dirty word in the Labour Party, and it's never mentioned, and they don't quite understand that for a business to pay well, to all of those things, they actually have to have money coming in to be able to do that. And it just seems crazy to me that they just don't get that.
Now, Michael Wood's the minister who's pushing this through. Now, he's ex-union, but I was lucky enough to have Joe Gallagher in here. Now, I don't know if you know Joe. He's from the engineers, Etu.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and the reason I got him in for an interview, I was so impressed. Now, this is a union that went to he's been negotiating with the steelworks out at South Auckland here, and said to them, we want you to be productive because we know then we can put pressure on you for more wages. But if you're unproductive, well, how can we help to be make productive? And if we can help, then we're going to obviously ask for a piece of the pie too. Now, that's sensible thinking. Now, that's proper negotiation.
Absolutely, and productivity should be mentioned in every avenue of those discussions, because it's going to hit the small medium businesses. It won't affect the big ones so much who are doing very well, but the small businesses with half a dozen employees, it's going to affect.
I'm pleased you brought that up because I'm the CEO of a small business voice, but what it is, what we're all concerned about in terms of small business is that we won't get a say in any of this, and the big businesses who want to see the back end of us because we compete with them will just drown us and say, well, let's up the rates, and the small guy can shrivel up and go away. Absolutely,
and you just have to wonder whether that's part of the plan, because it's so blatant.
Look, just for the fundamentals of it, am I reading this right from what you understand, is that the ability to negotiate terms and conditions of employment will be wrenched off both parties and taken over by unions and an appointed representative on behalf of employers?
Correct.
Am I right in saying that if employers can't get their act together because they compete and they're not always best friends, but they can't get all, like from retail sector, there'd be hundreds of thousands of them. If they can't get their act together and getting one, am I right that the government appoints their representative?
That's correct. Yes. Yeah. The government they appoint one, and the decision is made for them without representation, basically.
Chris, I can tell you I've done negotiations like this for many, many years because that's my bread and butter. And I've acted on both sides of the fence. It's very rare the parties reach an agreement. It takes a lot and then you sit there for days and wait to starve someone out, and then industrial action is threatened on both sides, and you finally get there because there's pressure on the parties. How do you see this finishing up when you can't strike?
Yeah, well, I just see a real messy process and a lengthy process, unsettling for workers. It's pitting employees against employers where prior there wouldn't have been. I just see so many things wrong with this legislation.
So if the parties can't come to some agreement, which I would say is 90% chance going to happen, then it goes off back to the government employee.
Yeah.
And they will make a decision.
And they make a decision, that's right.
And they decide on pay rates and everything else.
Correct. Yeah, minimum pay rates. It's minimum standards, and you'll hear that from the government. They're only talking about minimum standards, minimum rates, but they affect all of the other pay rates as well. So it's a decision made that will affect everyone.
Wow. And of course, they've already signalled the fundamental obligation of the fundamental principle of the Act is to increase pay. And if a government servant is asked to make that decision, you know what it's going to be.
Absolutely.
It's going to up the pay rates. Yeah. What's going to happen, do you think, to business? Because you own a small business.
Yeah, I do. I see a number of businesses becoming unviable, small businesses, and people just saying this is too hard, this is too tough, I'm out of here, and I just don't think that is good for New Zealand. It's we're a country built on small business, and it's not only the productivity side of things, but that's the social fabric as well, and I just see everything bad in this bill.
Do you know, Chris, I got to just say it's really good that you're in Parliament because you're a small businessman, and it has a history of not having small business representation in there. And look, I know that you're not part of one of the big parties, but you ACT really kicks above its weight. And thank you for that. But we're heading for a recession.
Yeah.
We've got this on top of it, fair pay, where they're going to forcibly increase wages on employers. We're in for a pretty miserable time, aren't we?
It's going to be tough. It really is. And this is another piece of legislation that even if we thought it was a good idea, it should be put off and until we're over this, and then we can actually have a decent discussion. But things are so tough out there at the moment for small business that this is just another thing that they really don't need. Another worry. It's going to be a cost, and it's going to unsettle the workforce that we're desperately short of anyway.
Oh, yes.
And it's
So you're going to get upset employees who have had their terms and conditions taken off and going to be done by a union. Then we've got employers who are not going to be represented who they want and going to have very little say in it. And then in the end, I think that process is going to be yes, personally, and it's going to end up with a public servant declaring this is the law. This is going to be the agreement that you have to abide by law.
Yeah, no, it seems crazy. The other thing in the bill, I had one of my employees come up to me and they said, I read through the bill, and are you going to have to take me aside and talk to me away from everyone else to make sure that I understand it, a Māori employee? And they were really offended that I was going to have to explain to them and to make sure they understood. Patronising. That's they just don't want this division and this whether it's between whoever, employees, employers, and people. The feedback I'm getting is that the employees just don't want this.
And look, the Labour caucus, I believe, is 30% ex-union representatives, and what they see is big business. They go into there, and the big boss never sees the workers. Of course, I know them by name because that's BS as well. But when you get to small businesses, and you're there, Chris, that's what I say I love about you, mate, because you've got to work alongside those workers. You're not just the boss, you're their workmate as well, and probably a friend in many ways.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's part of that's not unusual in small business. It becomes in Parliament last week, one of the Green members said there needs to be collegiality between the unions and the employees, and I pointed out there needs to be collegiality between the employees and the employers in the business, and they need to get on, and that's where people need to get on, not dividing and having a union against everyone else.
Yeah, and having to work because you have to work because the boss will kick your ass if you don't. It's more like, I know what the boss is trying to achieve here. I know he's got a business. I've got to make sure it's successful, and then the chances for me doing better in my work, everything will just come up with it.
That's exactly right, and I know my employees understand that a lot better than all of the Labour Party that are in government at the moment. They really do.
What a way to finish it.
Yeah.
Hey, Chris, thanks very much for coming in. And
Fantastic.
Look, were you prepared to come back and talk some more about this? Because as it goes, I know there's going to be a lot of litigation in relation to the fundamentals of this act, but I'd like to get your feedback as a politician.
Yeah, no, sure. I'm happy. It will be interesting to see how it progresses. I know when it was first put forward, Jacinda Ardern said there might be 2 or 3 cases, but now I know the unions are lining up, so it'll be interesting to see how this develops.